A woman in her late 30s stepped quietly onto the shooting range just outside a military base in North Carolina. She didn't carry herself like someone looking for attention. No flashy gear, no loud conversation, no dramatic entrance. Just a quiet calm that made her stand out even more. She wore faded jeans, scuffed boots, and a long-sleeved flannel shirt that seemed better suited for a hiking trail than a live-fire zone. She signed the logbook as "Am Ryder," nodded at the clock behind the counter, and headed to the furthest lane, the one usually left for serious shooters. People barely noticed her at first. To most, she looked like a bored housewife or maybe a cautious civilian taking up target practice. But the moment she picked up her rifle and settled into position, everything changed. Her hands moved with practiced ease. Every adjustment, the scope, her breathing, the way she pressed her cheek against the stock, was smooth and purposeful. When she fired, the sound cracked through the air like any other shot, but her aim was something else entirely. Tight groupings, bullseye after bullseye, from multiple distances. Even on a windy day, her precision never wavered. A pair of younger Marines standing a few lanes over stopped what they were doing to watch. One leaned in to whisper to the other, "She shoots like a sniper." The other nodded slowly, not taking his eyes off her target. One older man, a loudmouth regular, snorted and muttered a sarcastic comment about lucky shots until she adjusted to a 500-yard range and fired 3 rounds in under 5 seconds, all within an inch of each other. He didn't speak again after that. While reloading, her sleeve pulled back slightly, just enough to reveal something on her left wrist. A tattoo, faint but distinct, a triangle with strange, unfamiliar symbols etched inside it. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but one man did. He sat alone at a bench near the vending machines, retired, judging by the gray stubble and the old military cap with faded pins. A former range officer, according to the locals. When he saw the tattoo, he stiffened. His eyes widened, and the color drained from his face. He looked like he'd seen something he wasn't supposed to. Or someone. He didn't say anything. He just stayed, hand shaking slightly as he reached for his coffee. Back on the range, Ryder finished her final set, packed up her gear without a word, and walked calmly back toward the parking lot. She passed right by the old man without so much as a glance. He watched her go, eyes never leaving her. Later that evening, he called someone he hadn't spoken to in over a decade. The moment the line connected, he said only 5 words. "She's alive. Valkyrie is alive." 3 days later, the once quiet shooting range buzzed with new energy. A convoy of matte black SUVs pulled up, their presence sharp and commanding. Out stepped a group of Navy SEALs in casual combat gear, each of them radiating the kind of confidence earned in hostile territories. At their front was Commander Reed Wallace, a man whose presence alone could silence a room. Stern, square-jawed, and all grit, Wallace had spent over 2 decades in the field, leading elite teams through operations that never made it to the news. They were here for a routine training exercise. At least, that was the official story. But even in routine, Wallace expected excellence. The team was briefed, the range cleared for their session. But when Wallace stepped out of the truck and scanned the area, his eyes caught something unexpected. A lone civilian already occupying Lane 7. She moved like she belonged there, calm and focused, completely undisturbed by the presence of the elite military unit now sharing the range. It was Ryder. She didn't look up when they arrived. Didn't flinch. Just kept loading her rounds, aligning her scope, firing, deliberate and deadly precise. One after another, her bullets struck their targets with chilling consistency. Wallace narrowed his eyes, intrigued. It wasn't just skill, it was something in the way she moved. Fluid, economical, too smooth to be learned in civilian courses. He watched her eject a magazine, reload without looking, and reposition with minimal effort. She wasn't just a good shot. She was trained. He walked a little closer, curiosity pulling him in like gravity. Then, just as she reached forward to adjust her rifle, her flannel sleeve rose slightly, higher than before. And that's when he saw it. The tattoo. A triangle, marked with unusual etchings. It wasn't big, but it hit Wallace like a bullet to the chest. He stopped mid-step, His heart missed a beat. His eyes locked onto that mark as if it were a ghost. He turned to his second-in-command, Lieutenant Grant, and whispered tightly, "Did you see that mark?" Grant furrowed his brow. "What mark, sir?" Wallace's voice dropped even lower. "That's impossible." The image of that tattoo yanked him backward in time. 15 years ago, somewhere deep in the mountains of Syria, their team had been ambushed after a botched extraction. Surrounded, bleeding, and out of ammo, Wallace had accepted death. But someone didn't. Through the smoke, from a ridge hundreds of yards away, precise shots picked off the enemy one by one. Each shot surgical. By the time evac arrived, the team was still breathing, thanks to a sniper they never saw, only later debriefed about. She went by the code name Valkyrie. She was part of a unit so secret, most denied it even existed, Unit Aegis. A myth among even elite circles. Her kill count was legendary. But after Belarus, she vanished. Files marked her KIA. He never forgot that tattoo. He saw it once, on her wrist, when she pulled him onto the evac bird with blooded hands and broken ribs. And now, it was he, on a civilian, shooting on a public range. Wallace's face turned unreadable. His posture stiffened. All thoughts of today's training disappeared. He took one last look at the woman in Lane 7. And suddenly, he wasn't thinking like a commander anymore. He was thinking like a man who had just seen a ghost that wasn't supposed to exist. The moment they left the range, Commander Wallace ordered Lieutenant Grant into the tactical truck parked outside. The rest of the SEAL team remained on the line, unaware of what had just shaken their commander. Inside the truck, the windows tinted and the world outside muted. Wallace locked the door and turned to face Grant. "I need to tell you something," Wallace said, his voice lower than usual. Not commanding, but contemplative. "And it doesn't leave this truck." Grant nodded, suddenly more late. Wallace pulled out his encrypted tablet, unlocked a hidden folder buried beneath layers of clearance. He tapped a file marked only with a Greek letter, Omega, and a grainy black and white image appeared on the screen. A woman in tactical gear, her face partially obscured by shadows, crouched beside a ridge. "That woman we saw today," Wallace said slowly, "was known as Valkyrie. 15 years ago, she wasn't just a sniper. She was the best in the Western Hemisphere, maybe the world." Grant leaned in. "She belonged to a unit called Aegis," Wallace continued. "Joint Task Force. No name tags. No flags. No official record. We used to call them Ghosts because they operated where even the CIA wouldn't go." He took a breath, then began the story. It was 2009, northern Syria. Wallace's SEAL team was on a high-risk extraction mission, deep in contested territory, tasked with recovering a rogue asset. But the mission went bad, fast. Intel was wrong. They were ambushed, boxed in, outnumbered 3-1. 2 of his men were hit. Ammo was low. Communications were jammed. "We were dead," Wallace said flatly. "I made peace with it. Told the boys to brace." But then it started. From somewhere far above, shots began ringing out, one after another, precise and surgical. Hostiles dropped one by one, 12 in total, in under 3 minutes. The SEALs never saw who fired. They just saw death falling from the sky like judgment. Finally, a rescue chopper appeared on the horizon, unauthorized, off the books. And standing next to it, guiding them with a laser pointer in hand, was a lone operative. Tall, steady, rifle slung across her back. When I limped toward her, Wallace recalled, I asked for her name. She simply said, "Call me Valkyrie." The rest was a blur. She dragged him and the wounded onto the bird, took one last look back at the battlefield, and climbed aboard. As Wallace leaned back, bleeding and barely conscious, he caught a glimpse of her wrist. A triangle tattoo with strange symbols, almost like runes. "That symbol," Wallace whispered, tapping the table. "That's what I saw today." Grant looked stunned. "But sir, Valkyrie died. The Belarus mission, wasn't she KIA?" "That's what the reports say," Wallace replied bitterly. "But here's the thing. Her body was never recovered. No blood trail. No footage. Nothing." He turned the screen again, this time to a satellite image of an abandoned facility in Belarus. That mission was a setup. I knew it then. Half a team wiped. The rest disappeared. And after that, the files were sealed. Her name redacted. Valkyrie was declared dead. Grant stared, processing. Why would they do that? Because Valkyrie knew things. She had dote on black contracts, shadow wars, high-level ops that violated every code. People in power wanted her gone. Not because she failed, but because she knew too much. Wallace leaned forward, eyes cold. And now she's here. Alive. In plain sight. Either she's hiding from something, or preparing for something big. He closed the tablet. I saw that tattoo once, covered in ash and blood, and I've never seen it again until today. There was silence in the truck, the kind that only comes when two men realize they've just brushed up against something much bigger than they were ever meant to touch. Wallace looked out the window toward the distant road Ryder had driven off on. She saved my team's life once, he said, and now she's walking around with that same ghost on her wrist. If she's back, there's a reason, and I intend to find out why. The sun dipped low behind the trees as the last brass casings cooled on the gravel range. Most of the SEAL team had already packed up and left, their chatter fading into engine hums and fading echoes. The lot was nearly empty now, except for her. Ryder moved with quiet precision, sliding her rifle into its case, zipping each pouch as if it were muscle memory. Her hair was pulled back, her expression unreadable. From behind, she looked like anyone, except for the woman Commander Reed Wallace believed she truly was. He stayed back at first, watching from a distance. For a moment, he hesitated, unsure if this was even the right thing to do. But the image of that tattoo refused to leave his mind. Finally, he stepped forward, boots crunching softly against the gravel. He kept his tone low, non-threatening. "Excuse me." She paused. "That tattoo on your wrist," he continued carefully. "Where did you get it?" Ryder didn't turn around. Her hands didn't move, but something in her posture shifted, like a breath held too long. "Some marks," she said quietly, "aren't meant to be remembered." Wallace took another step. He didn't push, just let the truth carry the weight. "You saved my life once," he said. "Syria. 15 years ago. You were Valkyrie." At that, her hands faltered, just slightly. The zipper on her rifle case trembled between her fingers. She didn't deny it, didn't laugh it off. Instead, she stood up slowly, her back still to him. The silence stretched between them like a wound being reopened. "I'm not her anymore," she whispered. "She died in Belarus." Wallace stepped closer now, voice softer. "Then tell me why you disappeared. We searched for weeks. We thought you were gone." Ryder finally turned to face him. Her eyes were older now, sharper. There were fine lines around them, but not from age. From pain. From grief that never healed. Without a word, she reached down and slowly rolled up her left sleeve. The full tattoo emerged in the fading light, an ancient Valkyrie sigil etched in black ink. Beneath it were coordinates, faint but precise. "I buried her in Belarus," she said, her voice low and steady. "I lost my entire unit that day. We were set up. The extraction point was fake. No backup, no drones, nothing, just silence on every comm channel." She looked past him, toward the trees, as if seeing something far away. "They hunted us for days, picked us off one by one. I watched men, my brothers, bleed out in the snow. I had a shattered rib cage, torn ligaments, and frostbite. But I walked 73 miles, alone." Wallace stood there, still, the weight of her words sinking deep. "When I made it out," she continued, "I found out we'd been scrubbed, redacted, files sealed, death certificates issued without bodies." She met his eyes now. "They erased us, not because we failed, but because we knew too much. About the contracts, the money, the ops that weren't supposed to exist." Wallace clenched his jaw. "I knew it was a cover-up. I just didn't know you were still breathing." "I didn't want to be," she said. "Not for a long time." Silence returned, heavy and unresolved. Then Ryder added, almost as an afterthought, "I came here to disappear, to pretend none of it mattered. But if you saw that tattoo, then maybe it still does." Wallace nodded slowly. He didn't salute, didn't reach out, He simply said, "You were never a ghost to me. And if you're back, then someone's about to be very, very afraid." That night, long after the house had gone quiet and the lights were low, Commander Reed Wallace sat in his home office, surrounded by classified folders and the faint hum of a secure satellite connection. The air smelled like old paper and cold metal. His military-issued desk lamp cast a dim, narrow cone of light over the chaos of decades-old reports and mission briefs. He hadn't touched these files in years. He slid a leather-bound folder across the table, the one marked with no title, only a blacked-out seal. The KIA report for Valkyrie's final mission. Operation Black Frost. As he flipped through the pages, a sense of unease crept in. The details were wrong. First, the timestamps. The team was supposedly ambushed at 0300 hours, but the signal flays logged by surveillance drones occurred at 0243. A small thing, easily missed, but it didn't line up. Next, the GPS coordinates. Scrubbed, replaced with generalized map zones instead of precise locations. He remembered Valkyrie's exact evac point. It wasn't where the map claimed it was. Someone had altered the record. Then he found the personnel list. It named the fallen operatives, but asterisks had replaced the names of certain members. Even Valkyrie's code name was redacted from the official after-action report. She wasn't even listed as missing, just quietly declared KIA, no body recovered, no visual confirmation. He knew what this was now. A smokescreen. He reached for a locked drawer and pulled out a secondary device, an encrypted phone used only for one contact. Someone from his old world. A man named Cole Briggs, former NSA code analyst, now working in the private intelligence sector. Someone who owed Wallace for a favor in Afghanistan that no one else knew about. He dialed. After 3 rings, a voice answered. "Reed, didn't think I'd hear from you again." "I need intel," Wallace said. "Deep scrub. Untraceable. You sound rattled." "I just saw a ghost," Wallace replied. He forwarded the KIA report. Briggs fell silent as he scanned through the document. Then, after a few moments, "This isn't just altered. It's rewritten. This wasn't a failed mission. It was a cleanup." Wallace's jaw tightened. "You're sure?" "Positive. I've seen this pattern before. Replaced coordinates, ambiguous timestamps, blacked-out asset codes." Valkyrie's team wasn't lost. They were eliminated. Wallace's voice dropped. "By who?" There was a pause. Then Briggs responded, quietly. "The operation was authorized from within the Pentagon. High-level clearance. The signature trail stops at a man named General Langston Pierce." Wallace sat back in his chair like he'd been punched. Pierce, a decorated 4-star general, publicly lauded for his leadership during the Cold War, now freshly retired and beginning a political campaign, rumored to be gunning for the National Security Advisor seat under the next administration. "Is the one pushing for increased black budget funding," Wallace muttered. "Wants to bring back autonomous ops. Same structure Aegis used." "Exactly," Briggs said. "But has got to keep the skeletons buried if he wants the chair. Valkyrie? She's the last link to a mission that was never supposed to exist." "She wasn't abandoned," Wallace whispered, eyes narrowing. "She was hunted. Still is," Briggs added. "If she's alive, she's a liability to the most powerful man in the country. And believe me, if you saw her, others will too." Wallace ended the call and stared down at the papers before him. Pieces of a puzzle once thought complete, now violently unraveling. In the center of the mess was a single image, a younger version of Valkyrie, blurry but focused, eyes hidden beneath tactical shades, rifle slung across her chest. For the first time in years, Wallace didn't just feel duty. He felt rage. If General Pierce wanted the world to forget Valkyrie, he'd made one mistake, letting Wallace live. And now Wallace wasn't just going to remember her. He was going to make the entire country remember her too. The cabin sat alone on a ridge in the Carolina mountains, surrounded by tall pines and silence thick enough to muffle even the wind. It looked modest. Wooden porch, moss along the edges of the roof, a weathered rocking chair that hadn't moved in years. No mailbox, no driveway, just a date trail leading up from the trees like a secret path no one was meant to find. Wallace drove up just before sunset. He parked the truck far from the cabin, walking the last quarter mile with deliberate steps. He didn't come armed, at least not visibly, but he knew better than to arrive unannounced. Still, the woman who opened the cabin door didn't seem surprised. Ryder stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled, her face half-shadowed by fading light. There was no hostility in her eyes, just awareness. She already knew why he'd come. "You found something," she said flatly. "I did," Wallace nodded. "And you need to hear it." She hesitated for a breath, then stepped aside, motioning him in. Inside, the cabin was sparse but organized. A cot, a wood stove, a weathered desk with no electronics. Only books, paper maps, a steel canteen on the table. It was the home of someone who trusted nothing digital and no one at all. Wallace sat, unfolded a folder, and laid out the findings, photocopies, reports, the redacted Aegis logs, and finally, a satellite printout with the name General Langston Pierce circled in red. He scrubbed the Belarus mission, Wallace said. Signed off on it himself. He knew your team would be there. He made sure no one came for you. Ryder stayed at the name for a long time. When she spoke, it was a whisper. He was the one who briefed us. I remember now. He gave us our orders. Look me in the eye. Wallace nodded. Is the one who ordered it. Now he's campaigning to be named head of national security. Ryder didn't respond right away. She just stood there, the weight of that truth pressing down like a storm. Then she slowly moved toward the corner of the room. A worn rug covered the floorboards beneath her bed. She knelt, peeled it back, and pressed her fingers to a nearly invisible notch between the wooden planks. With a sharp pull, a section of the floor lifted open. Inside was a metal crate, cold, dust-covered, sealed with a reinforced latch. She opened it. Wallace's breath caught slightly. Inside, a disassembled sniper rifle, matte black, custom-built and still pristine. A handful of encrypted flash drives, each labeled in code. And beneath it all, a weathered chain with 4 dog tags, names etched deep, one of which was cracked down the middle. Ryder picked up the tags, fingers brushing the names like a prayer. These were the ones who didn't make it, she said. I've carried them for years, waiting, wondering if I imagined it all. If maybe I was the crazy one. You weren't, Wallace said. You survived the worst kind of betrayal. Ryder exhaled slowly. I didn't want revenge, Reed. I wanted to disappear. Live my life in silence. Let the ghosts sleep. He said nothing. Let her process. But now, she continued, her voice sharpening, if that man gets power again, he won't just bury the past. He'll bury others. More teams. More ghosts. She clicked the rifle pieces together with eerie familiarity. Like riding a bike. Like muscle memory forged in blood. You're not the only one he left in the date, she said. But I'm the one that made it out. Wallace watched her, and for the first time in years, he saw not the tired woman at the range, but the ghost of Valkyrie rising from the ashes. You sure you're ready for this? He asked. She looked at him, clear-eyed, calm, lethal. I've never been readier. Wallace stood, his mind already racing with plans, contacts, routes, and contingency escape protocols. Then let's burn the lies they buried us under. She gave a quiet nod. And just like that, Valkyrie was back on mission. Not for vengeance, but for truth. And this time, she wasn't leaving anyone behind. The ballroom of the Lafayette Regency Hotel in Washington, D.C. glowed with opulence. Marble floors, towering chandeliers, and the polished gleam of political ambition in every corner. Cameras lined the stage. Wealthy donors filled gold-lined chairs. Security men in suits lined the walls, their eyes scanning for trouble. This was no ordinary gala. It was a coronation in disguise. At the center of it all stood General Langston Pierce, resplendent in his tailored suit and American flag lapel pin. He was the night's honored speaker, introduced with the kind of reverence reserved for legends. Decorated war hero, Pentagon strategist, soon-to-be nominee for National Security Advisor. He stepped to the podium, his voice steady, smooth, practiced. Tonight, he began, we honor the values that define this great nation. Honor, duty, loyalty. The crowd applauded. Across the street, On the rooftop of a building with a perfect sight line to the ballroom's tall windows, Ryder lay prone in civilian clothes. No scope, no rifle, just binoculars and a laptop open beside her. Her long hair was pulled under a cap. No one would recognize her. Not anymore. She watched the general through the glass. Her breathing slow. Her eyes locked on him, not with the gaze of a killer, but of a witness. Inside the ballroom, Wallace moved among the guests with precision. He wore a tux, smiled politely, shook hands with senators and CEOs. But in his inner coat pocket was a secure signal relay device, custom rigged by Briggs, the intel analyst, now synced to Ryder's laptop across the street. Pierce continued, "We must never forget those who gave their lives to keep this country free. The silent heroes. The unseen guardians." He almost choked on the irony. Ryder clicked a key on her laptop. It began instantly. At first, no one noticed. But on every screen in the press area, live feeds shifted, one by one, replaced with a chilling black-and-white satellite image. Then a document. Top secret. Aegis Termination Authorization. Signed by General Langston Pierce. Followed by a short audio clip, raspy and muffled at first, but soon unmistakable. No rescue. No trace. Aegis was never there. Bury it. Gasps filled the room. Phones started buzzing. Reporters began shouting questions before the general could even finish a sentence. Security scrambled. Staffers moved in a panic toward the press area, shouting about hacking. But the feeds kept rolling. One file after another. Mission logs. Coordinates. False casualty reports. Proof that Pierce had signed off on a black-op erasure of Unit Aegis, declaring them dead before they were ever deployed. Evidence that soldiers had been sacrificed, not for national interest, but to protect a man's ascent to power. Pierce froze at the podium. His confident mask cracked. He stammered, looking to his aides. What is this?" Outside, sirens echoed through the streets. Within moments, a wave of FBI agents entered the ballroom, weaving through panicked guests. Wallace stepped aside as they moved in. The general tried to protest, voice rising. "This is a setup. This is fake." But his voice drowned beneath the chaos. The agents placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "You're under federal investigation for war crimes and conspiracy." Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. Guests recoiled. And from the rooftop, Ryder watched it all. Silent. Still. She didn't blink. She didn't smile. She just closed the laptop, packed it away, and stood up. In the distance, Wallace caught a glimpse of the building. He didn't wave. He didn't nod. But he knew she was there, and she knew that he had held his part of the mission. She disappeared down the fire escape, blending into the darkened alley below. No trace left behind. While inside, the man who erased her was being erased in real time. By truth, by justice, and by the one woman he failed to kill. No blood, no bullets, just the final shot fired through the one weapon more powerful than any gun. The truth. The sun cast a soft golden glow over the polished stone walls of the Arlington Memorial Annex, a quieter corner of the grounds where most tourists never wandered. Today, a new plaque had been installed, one without fanfare or ribbon cutting, but with a weight heavier than marble. Unit Aegis, honor the forgotten. A row of names etched in clean steel reflected the morning light. The world had finally learned what had been hidden. The operatives who had been erased not for failing, but for knowing too much. For surviving too well. Near the bottom of the list was one name the world now recognized. Maya Ryder, with a single word beside it, survivor. Commander Reed Wallace stood a few feet back, hands behind his back, wearing civilian clothes now. He had taken early retirement, his final mission complete. In his new chapter, he'd launched a non-profit called Echo 22, a sanctuary for discarded operatives and veterans whose stories never made the headlines. They weren't just being remembered now. They were being restored. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He simply stood there, paying his respects, before turning and walking away into a life that finally felt honest. Miles away, nestled in a remote stretch of forest, another kind of tribute was unfolding. At a repurposed ranger station hidden deep in the Carolina pines, Laughter rang out from a group of young women lining up at the shooting range. But this wasn't a military drill. It was a recovery ground, a training site designed for women who had survived things few could speak about: abuse, war, abandonment. And leading them was the woman they knew only as Maya. She moved between them with quiet confidence, adjusting postures, offering gentle corrections, reminding them to breathe. Not just for aim, but for life. She taught them how to stand tall again. Inside the main cabin, maps lined the walls, training regimens, tactical strategies, but also journals, meditative spaces, and open doors for healing. It was more than a facility. It was a forge. At the end of the day, a teenage girl, no older than 17, lingered behind. She looked nervous but curious, clutching her helmet in one hand. "Miss Ryder," she asked softly. Maya turned to her, setting aside a toolkit. "Were you ever scared out there?" the girl asked. Maya paused, then knelt to the girl's level. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Only once," she said, "when I realized no one was coming to save us." The girl swallowed. Maya smiled. "So I became the one who could." The girl smiled back, and something shifted in her posture. A little taller, a little braver. That night, as the camp settled into quiet, Maya stood alone at the edge of the range, the trees swaying gently in the evening breeze. She didn't wear the name Valkyrie anymore. She didn't need to. The world had tried to bury her in silence. But silence, like legends, can echo. Final line. They buried her in silence. But legends don't die. They reload.